Good morning. Let me start by congratulating the organizers of this conference, the Parahangan Catholic University, and also greetings to APISA, the Asian Political and International Studies Association, for co-organizing the second biennial International Conference on International Relations in the historic city of Bandung. I should say that I have a long association with APISA. I gave the keynote speech to APISA's founding conference in Kuala Lumpur in 2001, and I served as the co-president of APISA, the first co-president of APISA from 2002 and 2004, and during this time I organized the first APISA Congress in Singapore. So a lot of good memories and my best wishes to all the leaders and organizers of this very important event. Now, I'm sorry that I cannot be with you today in person, but I'm very excited about the theme of this meeting, which is Revisiting Bandung, Asia's Insights into Global IR and Political Science. Let me make some observations about why Bandung is important and what are the legacies of the historic Bandung Conference of 1955 that informs the study of international relations and political science. So if you look at the legacy of Bandung, five stand out. The first one is that it overcame, in fact frustrated, the hostility of Western powers who tried first to prevent the conference from happening and later tried to influence its outcome by manipulating their allies and friends who participated in the Bandung Conference as members of various national delegations. Bandung overcame those manipulations and was able to come up with a consensus statement, the 10 principles of Bandung, which really served as the principles of conduct for the newly independent countries, not only in Asia and Africa, but really around the global south. Another legacy of Bandung is the delegitimation of Cold War alliances, particularly Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. And after the Bandung Conference in 1955, CETA really failed to take on any new members or gain any new membership and kind of lost a bit of its legitimacy and then kind of faded away gradually, of course, but decisively. The third legacy of Bandung is that it laid the foundation of third world solidarity, the solidarity or unity of post-colonial states, and really was the precursor to the non-aligned movement, which continues to this day as a major force in shaping world politics. The fourth legacy of Bandung is that it reshaped the relationship among the Asian countries, particularly India, China, and Southeast Asia. Now, at Bandung, India and China were major players, but following Bandung, they got into a competition and conflict leading to the 1962 war between those two big powers. And that sort of led Southeast Asian countries to realize that they should build their own regionalism without any outside help, including those from India and China. And in a sense, just over a decade after the Bandung Conference, ASEAN was created in 1967. So in some ways, Bandung created space for Southeast Asian countries to showcase their unity and their leadership in Asia and the world. And that legacy continues today in the form of ASEAN. And fifth, but not the least, Bandung contributed to the strengthening of global norms, norms such as anti-racialism, self-determination, anti-colonialism, and human rights. Again, those are very important contributions of Bandung, which resonates with us today and informs the international relations of the global south. So let me just say a few things about how does this legacy or legacies of Bandung affect the study of international relations. In 1955, when the Bandung Conference was held, international relations was a young discipline, and for good measure, it was really an American social science, as the late Stanley Hoffman put it. The discipline of international relations emerged in Europe, in particularly United Kingdom after the First World War, but it was only in the United States that really took off, and with new theories and new journals and new institutions for training and the like. But American dominance was such that there were little space for other voices, especially from the Global South, in the theoretical or methodological apparatus or in the literature of international relations. And that was unfortunate because the Southeast Asia in particular had a lot to contribute, did contribute a lot of ideas and concepts that could have been very useful to the founding of international relations as a discipline. So ideas such as Pan-Asianism, anti-colonialism, and neutralism, which I already mentioned, the no-line movement actually had a direct lineage from the Bandung Conference. But those things were completely ignored by the scholars and the textbooks of international relations that were dominated by the United States, that came mainly from the West. But those things are changing today. The Western or American dominance of IR is being challenged, and there is a growing realization that international relations should hear and acknowledge the contributions, the voices, the agency of non-Western countries, other countries, and scholars of the Global South. And this is a very interesting moment in that transition from what one might call traditional Western-dominated IR to a global IR. Now, what is the traditional IR about? Briefly, traditional IR takes the Peace of Westphalia of 1648 as its point of departure. And if you just go back to history a little bit, after Westphalia led to the birth of the sovereign nation state, and following that idea of a sovereign nation state spread around the world through decolonization. This is also the period following Westphalia was the period of the rise of the West and the decline of the rest, so to speak. After decolonization, the idea of nation state international relations became global in a sense that the ideas and institutions became the standard for developing countries, the post-colonial countries to follow. Now, in this spread of the basic idea of the nation state and international relations, the European state system and the American foreign policy became the critical defining elements. The United States, after 1945, after the Second World War, contributed its own ideas, but they were consistent with the prior Westphalian norms, except that the United States created what we now call the liberal international order. And that is the order that is under challenge today, especially under President Trump. But throughout all this, the history, culture, and ideas and agency of non-Western countries or Global South countries received very little attention. They were considered, these Global South countries were considered as norm takers, not norm makers, and as passive recipients rather than active contributors of ideas and approaches to international relations. But against this narrative, the global IR paradigm offers a counter-narrative. The global IR concept is something that I helped to introduce in 2014 when I became the first non-Western president of the International Studies Association. And I should say that the first president of ISA with a Southeast Asian expertise. And that allowed me to bring in Southeast Asian experiences into the agenda of International Studies Association, especially ideas that came out of Bandung directly or indirectly. What is global IR then? Very quickly, global IR has several important elements. First, international relations has multiple and global origins. It's not just a Western construct. It is founded on world history or global history, not just Greco-Roman or European or American history. Global IR does not reject existing theories of international relations, but it calls upon them to learn from the experience of the Global South and enrich itself by looking carefully and drawing on the non-Western societies and their ideas and traditions and practices. Global IR also embraces what I call pluralistic universalism. So universalism is normally defined as one size fits all, something that applies to all. But in social sciences and IR and philosophy, that has really meant the application of Western ideas or European ideas around the world. Now, for global IR, true universalism is acknowledging diversity and difference, but trying to find a common ground through dialogue and interaction. So that means it's a pluralistic rather than a singular Western conception of universalism that global IR embraces. Global IR also embraces or encourages the study of regions, regionalisms, area studies as important foundations of global order and important foundation of the study of international relations everywhere. And while regions differ and area studies has its own preoccupation with learning, going deep into the language and culture of different societies, through comparison, through contrast, and through integration, we can actually build a truly global field of knowledge from which people, scholars, and practitioners from different parts of the world can draw on. What about Indonesia? What is Indonesia's place and role in the making of global IR? So, international relations is a flourishing discipline in Indonesia. I've been told that there are some 72 universities offering degrees in international relations at the undergraduate level, and there are some 4,000 students graduate every year from these programs. This is pretty impressive. Indonesia also has a very rich tradition of foreign policy concepts and ideas that its leaders and practitioners have contributed since the very beginning of Indonesia as an independent country. So we have concepts such as bebas aktif, or free and active foreign policy. We have Sukarno's ideas of oldefos and nefos. We have ketahanan nasional and ketahanan regional, or national and regional resilience. And more recently, ideas such as the ASEAN Security Community and the idea of a dynamic equilibrium. Now, this is very interesting that the policymakers and leaders of Indonesia have come up with a number of very interesting ideas, and the academic community has really kind of, in a sense, slightly lagged behind this. So it is my hope that through conferences like this, the academic community of Indonesia should also contribute in its own way to the theory and practice of international relations through new ideas, new vocabulary, and new methodology. What about global IR in then? So global IR, I've always believed, would not come through a big bang, through some association or conference held in the United States in the West. Global IR will come alive through 1,000 small steps throughout the world. This conference is really one such step, and it's my hope that it will contribute to the momentum behind global IR. In 1955, the countries of Asia and Africa laid the foundation of a set of global norms that became really very important in shaping the history of international relations. Today, it is my hope that this conference held in the same city of Bandung in 2018 would also contribute towards the momentum, towards the foundation of a truly global discipline of international relations. So I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and ideas on global IR, and I look forward to hearing from you, and I would be happy to take some questions. But overall, I'd like to wish you every success at this conference. Thank you very much.